Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Wack. Today is February 18th, and today's episode is going to talk about RPIP64, the vote passing, and the aftermath of that. We're going to talk about new on-chain vote, the first on-chain vote. We're going to talk about the oDAO quite a bit, and a little bit about the Beam chain as well. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, so the place to start is this RPIP64 vote that passed, and this passed on February 16th at 8:47 p.m. So I didn't actually cover it in yesterday's episode, even though it was news for yesterday's episode, but that's okay. Yeah, so the vote passed. It was pretty much straightforward. It had 17,100 or thereabouts votes in favour of it, 99.27%, 126 votes against it, around 0.73%, and zero abstaining votes. And this was, of course, to bring the vote amounts in line with each other. So it sets the initial quorum values ahead of the protocol DAO's first on-chain vote, and it basically the parameters mirror each other. So the standard quorum parameter mirrors the snapshot quorum parameter. Snapshot quorum in function and should therefore be set to the same 15% value. The veto quorum is set higher to prevent governance capture, yet still low enough to be reachable with previously observed vote participation rates. So yeah, those numbers make sense. So the proposal quorum is at 30%. 20% is because it passed. So the quorum now is 15% on chain and 20% for veto. So, like I said, there was only one person who voted against it. All the big delegates voted in favor of this, and the person who voted against it was saying that I think they had a slight misunderstanding of how the vote works, but that's totally fine. So what's the outcome of this? Well, here you can see that the bootstrap mode setting has been modified. So it said setting proposal quorum set to 15%, and that was done by Rocket DAO protocol setting proposals, and that was executed yesterday at 8 p.m. So I could have said in yesterday's episode that the vote has passed, but the main thing that we're talking about now is that the setting has been modified on chain, and that's the exciting part. However, here Langus had an update as well overnight. He says the good news is the quorum vote has passed. This morning we've been preparing to change the value via the PDAO Guardian as directed by the PDAO, but there's an issue. We can make the quorum change, but the quorum veto change will fail because the safeguard only allows more than 51%. It says the veto quorum safeguard can be changed with Saturn 1, but it means we are unable to update that value now. Our intention is to proceed with the quorum change without the veto quorum change unless we get major concerns are raised. And Val says that makes sense to me. And he says, is veto quorum the minimum allowed by guardrail? And he says, yes, it's set to 51%. And then Hulu says, I think it's fine to only change the quorum for now, but we really do need to wait for Saturn 1 to change one guardrail. I guess the RPIP doesn't mention any required contract changes. Not sure what the best move there is. And then Langus says, Kane and I have discussed the option. The surface area is pretty small, but due to the way we release, we have to use an upgrade contract. Essentially, it isn't hard, but it's not trivial either, so it takes time. I guess it depends on the impact to spam protection. And Hulu says, realistically, I don't think we need it anyway, so it's not the end of the world if it only happens with Saturn 1. If doing it earlier would take up any Saturn 1 bandwidth, I'm for delaying it. Worst case, someone chooses to be annoying, but I doubt someone like Mini Kiev will be willing to lock up 100 RPL just for a bit, even if they don't lose it. And yeah, that's used Mini Kiev as an example there. That's nice. And then Angus says, okay, cool. We will deploy the quorum change now, and then we can sort out the veto. Is wasted effort to do the release in the meantime. In that case, we can get serious. In the case we get serious offenders, we can also do the release reactively. Not ideal, but possible. So that's where we stand. So the quorum number hasn't been changed on chain, but the expectation is that it's not really going to get used, hopefully. The chances of it getting used seriously are quite small. And if we need to, then we can change it actively. So yeah, that's really cool. So what's the outcome of this? Well, here we've got a new vote. So there's been a new PDAO proposal that has been set up as on-chain voting, and this was set up by Schifrin, and this is vote number 1, which is incredibly exciting. So that's awesome that Schifrin set this through, and the description is update RPL rewards distribution. So this is changing the numbers of how the RPL inflation is sent out. And what's happening is that 70% will be going to node operators as it currently does. However, what's going to change is that the PDAO will be getting a slightly smaller percentage of inflation, about 27.5%, and the oDAO are actually going to get 66% raise from 1.5% of inflation to 2.5% of inflation. Now, this, if you've been a regular watcher of Rocket Fuel, you'll know that this has been discussed a few times in the community about how the oDAO members had a level of dissatisfaction and they weren't getting paid enough and all this kind of stuff. And then with that, what happened is that they the community kind of like reset these parameters. So that's where we stand right now with this vote going through. And I think what's going to happen next is once this vote passes, then we will have another vote, hopefully, that will change the splits of the PDAO to give a little bit more money to the GMC if people want to do that. So this is this is changing the parameters. This is this is the really cool thing here, right? So the on-chain voting, what it does is gives the community the control of the bootstrap. The thing that Langer's, the parameters that Langer's tweaked in the previous story, that now will be going into the hands of the PDAO instead, and we'll be able to do all that on-chain. So this is one of those things that that's the first thing, and then the next vote I think will likely be that the working the split between the PDAO treasury, the IMC, and the GMC as well. And if the community wants that, then that will be voted on. But yeah, this is really, really exciting. And I know that Halil was really happy to have reached this point. Okay, so there was a whole lot of talk about oDAO stuff today. As you can imagine, like so much of the new vote that's going through is going to change things for the oDAO. So there was a lot of discussion about different ways of the oDAO operating and how much money they're making, or if they're operating at a loss and all that kind of stuff. And during this conversation, actually, Noshua here says, by the way, and puts in an Etherscan address, and this Etherscan address is the Lighthouse Oracle DAO node. And it shows that there has been no activity here for 25 days. So for nearly 4 weeks, the Lighthouse oDAO node has not been submitting any information and not been giving price updates. So yeah, that's not good. That of course definitely is not good. And we need to figure out what's going on, why their node is down, and how to help them get it back up again. But this is the really interesting discussion about the oDAO and how it all works, and how the team has seats and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to get that information, I think it makes sense to read up on it, because there's a lot of push and pull from the community. And I think one of the things that we don't have is an insight into what the oDAO are doing or thinking, and I think a lot of people are kind of disappointed about that, because it's just like kind of a black hole. Like we just don't know what's going on. Like, of course, the PDAO is the community as a whole, and we know what's going on with that for the most part, but the oDAO, they just kind of do their own thing, and no one really knows what it is. So yeah, that's something to hopefully figure out, basically. Okay, so then we as kind of like an offshoot of that discussion, Patches tagged Ken saying, do you want to share your cost breakdown to show what it costs to run an oDAO node? So he said that sharing with the larger PDAO community background, I was soliciting some input from rocket scientists about adjusting the splitter contract for the Rocket Pool Scientist 1 node. The relevant parts are as follows. So this is the good news. I've looked into the operating expenses for the Rocket Scientist oDAO node. The node incurred a total of 1.9 ETH spent in gas over the last 12 months. And it says there's an attached screenshot. This is about 50% reduction in gas fees from the prior 12-month period due to the lower than average gas prices on L1. He says, however, it's bad news. The node operator share earnings have dropped significantly due to two factors. The first is the implementation of RPIP 25. That is a 90% reduction in the pay that the oDAO gets. And the second thing is the decline in the RPL ETH ratio means that they're earning less as well. So Ken goes on to say, in addition, the node is assessed as having a 5-year amortization expense at the initial hardware of $815.21. He says, I'm running it from home, so I'm not factoring any costs for the internet and server admin. So last year's operating expenses came to 2.25 ETH. So he says last year the node operator share earned only 162 RPL, so it's one additional share for 4 reward periods and 2 additional shares for 9 reward periods. This is when converted to ETH, the RPL earnings of the node operator share only amounted to 0.97 ETH. So I ended up operating the node at a loss of 1.27 ETH. This is the node's 1/16th of the oDAO membership is estimated to earn 988 RPL this year, and at current value of $8.44. Or 0.002587 ETH, it's estimated to earn 2.55 ETH. So he says there's an expense and sheet, and this is the information there as well with the screenshot. So yeah, it looks like, operating an oDAO node is expensive, and this is with the split. So here, then Noshua asked the question, he says, how did you convert to ETH value? Can you give me the total in the node earned, including the share of the other rocket scientists? And then there's a link to the splitter contract where you can go get that information, which is pretty cool to see. And then Ken says Pateris got the information. The RPL value was from the linked spreadsheet. One of the tabs has historical RPL prices from CoinGecko. I think I just used the one the closest date in the lookup command. And then Noshua says it seems to use today's value. I don't see any way to change its value to the day of transfer, so it's not very accurate. And then and then there's some questions there, but it basically means that the oDAO members, the amount that they're earning has of course gone down so much that it might not be covering gas basically. But I think like the full oDAO seats, like that are not on splitters, they are making enough money to be okay. But it's just these ones with with the split, like for the rocket scientist, that's not making enough money for Ken, so he's operating actually at a loss. So yeah, that's some really interesting information there, and I think that's one of the reasons why there is going to be a little bit, well, potentially, if the community votes it through, a little bit of a raise for the oDAO members. And then finally, some Ethereum news. So yesterday I gave mention to the first Beam chain call that happened. Well, here Justin Drake provided a summary of the call. So he says there's going to be 8 new Beam teams. So comments from the 6 mainnet consensus layer teams and intros from 2 new Ethereum Foundation coordinators. So just getting to know you kind of thing. What's really interesting here is that some of the devs, they're going to be working in Zig, Rust, C++, and other languages as well. But it's interesting that 3 or 4 of them potentially could be working in Rust. That's very interesting there. It looks like not all of the teams are going to be releasing clients, by the time the Beam chain comes around. But the fact is that this proposal hit the ground running, and then you can read the summary in the tweet, and the last link below. So on that note, it's been a bit of a quick episode, so I'm going to end it there. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all have a lovely day ahead, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.